Of the line, the tube was packed, and her chances of getting a seat were pretty poor at the best of times. But today, for some reason, her carriage seemed fuller than normal. With a loud, "Excuse me," followed by a sarcastic, "Thank you," when nobody moved, she pushed in between a young Asian woman typing a text message on her phone, quicker than Sophie could speak, and a grey-suited man carrying a huge bouquet of roses, and wedged herself against the window. She glared crossly through the stems, trying not to prick herself on the rose thorns, wondering what kind of idiot carried a huge bunch of flowers on the tube during the morning rush hour, and more importantly, what he'd done wrong to have needed to buy such an extravagant bouquet. Until she realized with a start what was going on. Today was Valentine's Day. She picked up a discarded copy of Metro and checked the date, then peered up and down the carriage. Every third or fourth seat seemed to be occupied by someone carrying flowers, from single red roses to huge bunches of... Well, she didn't know what they were called, but they were beautiful, and Sophie supposed she should be grateful that for a change, the train smelled of something other than sweaty armpits and garlic breath. Other people were clasping gift-wrapped or heart-shaped boxes of chocolates, and she briefly allowed herself to imagine how it would feel to receive such a gift when she got to the office, until the reality of her situation hit her. And she swallowed so hard, the sound made the woman next to her look up from her phone. The only thing the postman had brought this morning was her credit card statement, and while that had made Sophie's heart skip a beat, that was simply because her January sales shopping spree had pushed the balance scarily close to her credit limit. Sophie almost wanted to cry. A city of some 7 million people, and not one of them had sent her a Valentine's card. Not even Nathan Field, the dreamy guy who ran the technical support desk at our office. Though Sophie knew she shouldn't be surprised. London was full of prettier girls than her. Girls who probably wouldn't make fools of themselves in front of him, like she had. She blushed at the memory of her first week at work. She'd been having email issues and hadn't been able to believe her eyes when someone who looked like that guy from the Diet Coke adverts had come to fix them. And there and then she decided to invent some technical problem at least once a week. When he'd told her she had problems with her Outlook, she'd bitten her bottom lip suggestively, and Sophie hadn't known what had come over her, told him that wasn't the case from where she was sitting. And for a second or two, she'd thought they were having a moment. Trouble was, the moment had evidently passed Nathan by, as he'd simply mumbled something innuendo-free about needing to reboot her system, and Sophie had felt like curling up and hiding under her desk. From that day forward, she'd been too embarrassed to ask for technical support again, relying instead on the well-thumbed and appropriately titled, Sophie often thought, copy of Windows for Dummies she kept in her desk drawer. Still, she reminded herself it hadn't been a complete disaster. At least now she could add familiarity with Microsoft to her CV, even though getting familiar with Nathan was what she'd really wanted. She turned and stared out of the window, trying to ignore the carriage's loved-up air, knowing it was her own fault she was single. It had been her decision to finish with Darren, and since then she'd justified her lack of a love life by telling herself her career came first. Trouble was, she hadn't been doing so well at that either, and after what had felt like a very long couple of years, Sophie feared her behaviour was becoming desperate. She sometimes tailed good-looking guys round the supermarket to check whether the contents of their shopping baskets included meals for one, like hers did, or practiced signing emails with the surnames of men she barely knew, simply to see how it looked, and kept a bottle of Chardonnay permanently in her fridge for emotional emergencies, which turned out to mean most nights when she came home alone. The other day, she'd even considered getting a kitten. It wasn't that she didn't get her fair share of offers. She wasn't unattractive, and had even been told she looked a bit like Kate Winslet, though the person who'd said that had then proceeded to say he'd hated Titanic, which had taken a bit of the gloss off the compliment, and not only because Titanic was one of Sophie's favourite films. No, she was just being picky, and besides, it would have to be someone pretty special to divert her from the path of world domination she'd hoped the move to London would set her off on. And while she'd perhaps only gone a couple of steps along that path, Sophie loved where she worked, at a software company in trendy Soho, with her own business cards, with her name on them, and not a handwritten in black biro edition either. And although she still didn't quite understand what the software did or how it did it,